August 26th is around the corner. Links down below. Join those programs on building your wealth, especially real estate. Boy, oh boy, a whistleblower just threw a wrench into the Elon Musk versus Twitter deal. Let's give you a preview of what's going on here. So first of all, we know that Elon Musk agreed to purchase Twitter for $54.20 per share. Since then, Elon Musk has said that the acquisition is on hold, pending Elon Musk's review of how many bots are actually on Twitter. This has led the Twitter share price to fall to a current price of $39.86. It's down 7.32% today, especially on these whistleblower claims that came out today, which could actually support Elon Musk winning in his lawsuit against Twitter to not buy Twitter. See, because even though Elon Musk agreed to buy Twitter for $54.20, he said that the deal was on hold because he wants to review how many bots there actually are, because he doesn't believe Twitter's disclosure in their SEC filings that they're only 5% bots. Now, most people honestly don't believe that there are only 5% bots on the Twitter platform, that there are probably a lot more bots. The problem with this is Twitter may not have actually had an obligation to properly disclose how many bots there truly were. In fact, in this July 17th video I made, I not only showed this disclaimer that Twitter has in their SEC filing, which basically says, hey, we think it represents fewer than 5% of our monetized daily active users. That is, we think the bots are less than 5% of our monetizable base, which is a really complicated metric where basically you might carve out certain groups of people and say, well, our monetizable users, which have way less bots, are only 5% bot heavy. But everything else, if you include all users, sure, maybe we have more bots. But even this, they qualify with making this determination. We applied significant judgment, so our estimate for false or spam accounts may not accurately represent the actual numbers. And then later in the video, I talked about how basically Elon Musk can't necessarily say that Twitter was fraudulently misrepresenting their bots because Twitter may not actually have had an obligation to prove how many bots there really are on the platform. And so what I did is I made this analogy that if you are buying a property, a home, let's say in real estate, and you're doing a home inspection, it's your obligation to protect yourself and make sure the plumbing's good. It's not the seller's obligation to go inspect the plumbing for you and tell you if it's good. Now, if the seller knows it's broken, they have a duty to disclose it to you. And if they lie about it, that would be bad. And so this is kind of where we've been standing the last couple months since this, Elon Musk lawsuit has broken out. I've had this position that what Elon Musk needs to find is fraud. He needs to find fraud at Twitter. Unfortunately, I tweeted yesterday that there is the possibility that Elon Musk subpoenaing Jack Dorsey could potentially be a sign that they're having trouble finding evidence of fraud. In fact, I tweeted, a subpoena sent by Elon Musk's team to Jack Dorsey might imply Elon's team hasn't yet found a smoking gun of fraud. That bodes well for Twitter. Again, if Elon can prove fraud, he will likely win. However, if he can't find fraud, Elon will likely own Twitter soon. And of course, I quote tweeted my original tweet, which Elon Musk has replied to twice, where I said, some say Elon Musk has to buy Twitter as is, with the bots because he, quote, waived his rights to due diligence. Wrong. Section 10b-5 Twitter of the SEC code says that Twitter can be liable for omissions of or misleading material facts. Waiving due diligence does not mean you have to accept a fraudulent disclosure. So this is just a fancy way of saying, look, if Twitter knew the bot numbers were wrong and then they lied to Elon has a much higher likelihood of winning in the legal battle. But Elon Musk needs evidence because Twitter likely has no obligation to say, yeah, well, this is how many bots we actually think there are. They could make a very simple sample. That could be a very bad sample. It could be poor business and they could be a crappy business. But they never said that their estimates had to be perfect. And this is basically what I roughly said in this video here. I'm going to play about 10 seconds of this, and then I want to get to the whistleblower. Listen to this from July 19th.
Could be wrong. In fact, it probably is wrong, but that doesn't make it fraudulent. That doesn't make it a material adverse effect. So this is where Elon, again, big uphill battle. He'd probably have to show that Twitter knows they were lying. That's going to be tough.
Ho ho ho! Enter whistleblower. Now, oh boy, I want to temper your expectations because it's still not a slam dunk, okay? It is still not a slam dunk. But basically, there's this dude whom I'm going to call Mr. Z, okay? So Mr. Z was the security lead, senior executive team responsible for information security, privacy, physical security, IT, and Twitter service, blah, 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 whatever. He got canned, okay? This guy got fired, and he's pissed he got fired. He's not very happy he got fired. Okay, fine. So now this guy goes to the company called Whistleblower Aid, which is the same company that represented the Facebook whistleblower when she testified before Congress, coming out about all these allegations about basically how Facebook knows that Instagram is bad for teenage girls, and yet they kind of try to bury that fact, even though their own research shows that they know Instagram and comparison photos can be bad for girls. And I'll tell you, I'm not a girl, I don't identify as a girl, but there is a thing called the toxicity of relativity. I think there's a way, some president or some fancy person previously said, comparison is the theft of joy, something to that effect. Basically, it all means the same thing. When you compare yourself, you become unhappy. So be careful doing that. But anyway, Facebook had all this research that got whistleblown by same company, okay? So this guy is now basically going to this law firm, which put together this crazy set of documents and says the following, that Mr. Z alleges that the CEO explicitly told Mr. Z to provide documents which both of them knew would be false and misleading regarding security matters to the Twitter board of directors. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And there are even more things in this that we're not even going to talk about in this video, because this video is going to be about the Elon versus Twitter thing, which we're going to talk about. And this goes deep. But let's go ahead and jump over to the Twitter versus Elon stuff, because this is where it gets interesting. And then we'll make some conclusions about what this means for Elon's potential case. Anyway, take a look at this. Right here. In response to Elon Musk saying that the Twitter deal is temporarily on hold, pending details supporting calculations that spam/fake accounts do indeed represent less than 5% of users. Right here. Keep in mind, Elon says users, not monetizable daily active users, right? The CEO replied, "First, let me state the obvious. Spam harms the experience for real people on Twitter and therefore can harm our business. As such, we are strongly incentivized to detect and remove as much spam as we possibly can every single day. Anyone who suggests otherwise is just wrong." So the CEO is responding to Elon saying, no, we have a duty to get rid of the spam, and we're all in on getting rid of spam. To this, Mr. Z comes out with the dirt. He says the CEO's tweet was a lie, and that the Twitter executives are actually not incentivized to detect or report total spam. In fact, Twitter has a proprietary measure, and it's an opaque metric of users called monetizable daily active users. And this is defined as valid user accounts that, italicized, might click through ads and might actually buy a product. And from Twitter's perspective, monetizable daily active users was an improvement because it could internally define the formula and thereby report numbers which would reassure shareholders and advertisers. And executive bonuses, which could exceed $10 million, are tied to growing that number. So let me give you a very simplified explanation of what that could potentially look like. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a heap of smelly crap right here, okay? This heap of smelly crap is Twitter. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna say this portion, or about 20% of it, maybe even 25% of it, is spam. What Twitter is basically saying is, hey, we might have this pile of heaping, stinky trash. But we're just going to grab a snapshot right here of our user base. And we're going to grab a snapshot of this stinky, piley, disgusting mess of trash and poop. And as long as that middle blue thing, which the blue thing we're going to call monetizable daily active users, as long as that middle blue thing is getting larger, we get paid more, even if the poop pile has now potentially quadrupled in size and there's spam everywhere around that poop pile. And only a little bit is in that MDAU, which, if you recall, that MDAU letter, or acronym rather, is exactly what they purposefully put in their SEC filing. They put that in the SEC filing because they say, and here it is, I'm gonna pull it up on screen again, this is from my older video, they purposefully use that MDAU acronym because that's where they could just take the slice of people they want and say, hey, well, that slice is growing. Yeah, sure, maybe all the other stinky poop is growing, but when you zoom in and just look at this, that's reasonably only 5%. It's kind of ridiculous. So anyway, that is this clarity that Mr. Z gives us here. And he mentions that there are millions of active accounts that are not counted in MDAU, either because they are spam bots, which now makes that 5% number artificially low, or because Twitter does not believe they can monetize these individuals. Then, Mr. Z goes on to say that ignorance was the norm among the executive leadership team. In fact, when Mr. Z asked the head of site integrity what the underlying spam bot numbers actually were, their response was, quote, oops, that's a pile of poop, "We don't really know." The company could not even provide an accurate upper bound to the number of poop or spam bots on the platform. The site integrity team gave 3 reasons for this failure. 1, they didn't know how to measure it. 2, they were buried under constant firefighting and couldn't keep up with reacting to bots and other platform abuse. And number 3, senior management didn't really want to know because, as Mr. Z learned from a different sensitive source, they were concerned that if accurate measurements became public, it would harm the valuation of the company. How interesting. So in other words, greedy executives worried that, we don't want to tell the truth about how much poop we got on our platform because, damn, that's going to hurt our compensation. Now, no frickin' wonder when Elon says he's going to buy Twitter, all of a sudden everyone's freaking out and having group handhold therapy sessions at Twitter, because there's some serious lying going on. Now, Mr. Z goes on to say that even the board of directors understood the counterproductive incentives in place. And in or around Q3 2021, in a board risk committee meeting, a director asked why more progress has not been made around bots. Our client remembers, Mr. Z remembers, an executive of the company admitting to the board members that the company had intentionally and knowingly deprioritized platform health to focus on growth. And this is where Mr. Z goes on to say with his attorneys, and keep in mind that everything in this document is an allegation and therefore could be wrong and one-sided, although we do have Twitter's response, which I'm going to read to you in just a moment. It is worth noting that Mr. Z goes on to say that Twitter created this MDAU metric precisely to avoid having to honestly answer the very questions Mr. Musk raised, which now creates some very interesting potential changes in the Twitter deal, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But first, let's take a look at Twitter's reply. This is the CEO of Twitter replying. There are news reports claiming that Twitter's privacy, security, and data protection practices were made by Mr. Z, a former Twitter executive who was terminated for ineffective leadership and poor performance. And we are reviewing the redacted claims that have been published, but what we've seen so far is a false narrative that is riddled with inconsistencies and inaccuracies and presented without proper context. I know this is frustrating and confusing to read, given that Mr. Z was accountable for many aspects of this work that he is now inaccurately portraying more than 6 months after his termination. But none of this takes away from the important work you have done and continue to do to safeguard the privacy and security of our customers and their data. This year alone, we have meaningfully accelerated our progress through increased focus on the incredible leadership from other Twitter people. This work continues to be an important priority for us, and if you want to read more about our approach, you can find a summary here. Given the spotlight on Twitter at the moment, we can assume that we will continue to see more headlines in the coming day. This will only make our work harder. I know that all of you take a lot of pride in the work we do together and in the values that guide us. We will pursue all paths to defend our integrity as a company and set the record straight. So in other words, their response is, well, that's wrong, and it's riddled with things that don't have the right context, okay? The context is we lied because we wanted to get rich. Anyway, sorry. Okay, all right. So what now is the impact to the potential lawsuit? Well, we don't actually have a concrete smoking gun yet for Elon Musk. But this is an ally for Elon Musk. This is somebody that Elon Musk's team, you can bet, is already on the phone with going, how much can we pay you for the evidence we have, or that you have rather, so that we can have it in our fight against Twitter, because we need everything you got. Because it sounds to me like even Mr. Z, as an executive witness who worked at the company, and someone who was able to provide testimony about how the executives at Twitter purposefully orchestrated their numbers in their SEC filings purposefully for the purpose, that's a lot of purpose, take a shot every time I say, okay, maybe I don't, but anyway, to mislead investors and people like Elon Musk. Ha ha ha. This story just got a whole lot more complicated. And all of a sudden, we go from, okay, like Twitter's here and Elon's here, and it's like, Elon, you gotta find some fraud. Like, if you can't find fraud, like, you're gonna have to buy the thing, you know? And now it's kind of like, oh, did we just equal the playing field a little bit more? Me thinks so. And me thinks that's why the share price is down a little over 7% today. And as more of these facts and disclosures come out, keep in mind, this is only page 12 out of 84. We're gonna have some entertainment ahead. Thanks for watching this. Hey, if you liked it, subscribe, and I'll keep bringing you more news. Thanks for watching. Remember, there's a coupon code expiring on the 26th for the amazing programs on building your wealth. Link below.